Hi, this is Sanjeev. I'm a creator of Data Ki Baat and a host as well. So in this show, what I do is that I really share with you what happens to me in a day-to-day with data, and I try to bring those topics which might as well be you might also be encountering in your day-to-day life. So today I'm going to talk about business value and outcome. Things were happening, occurring in my mind. Actually, it happens because I just came across a article, and that really made me think. So today, what I've done is that while I'm going to talk about business value of data quality, data governance, you can see as a program. We always try to promote data governance, data quality, and master data management. And very often, I mean, if you really hear talk to people, you will hear that it is not getting fully bought in. It is not getting adopted, or maybe it is not successful in a way that you want to really see it happening, like in terms of adoption, in terms of people following that, and so on and so forth. So that really brought me to this topic of today. It would be definitely going to be focused around you know data in terms of value creation for the business, right? So I have created a couple of slides as a reference material that I can always circulate after the show, and this will also guide me and be on track with what I'm going to share with you guys today. So with that, let me share my screen, and I'll take it from there. Hopefully, so well, so you know me. I'll move on to the topic. Well, your business is as fast as your data. I am very sure that you all would definitely agree with this. Uh, as data is core to any operations, anything that we want to do, definitely it make a lot of sense to really keep this thought as a prime focus, right? Because if you are really able to handle your data well, definitely you're going to grow your business in leaps and bounds. So I thought I'll start with this code and let you guys think through while I start moving to the topic that really made me think. So this is one of the news, not very recent, but yeah, it is not old as well. It is a news that I captured from Economics Times, and it is like talking about improved data quality. There is a lack of data quality in government data, and there has been a lot of concern about how those data has been seen, proposed, and interpreted. So you can always, and I'll share the link, and you can go with the and read it and understand what it is all about. But before that, I also try to look at, okay, what is this problem all about, and is it really a old one? So with some research, I figured that this this is not an old topic or old concern, right? It has got a history. There has been a concern around data quality. If it is if you have to see from the country and government standpoint, um, and now recently it has also popped up. So I really got into the news and then tried to dig, and thought that, okay, let me bring and extract my perspective. So looking closely, what I figured, if you really see on the screen, just really highlighted, right? There is a concern around um, people, that there is there is a lack of trained resources. There is lack of you know uh, resources who is on the ground collecting data for the government. And then there is also a concern around, since there is so much of volume, then maybe the IT systems are not capable, and hence this whole issues around data qualities on a various survey and various government data. So that really made. and raised a question around credibility. And there has been talk around who should probably own that, and then who should probably bring this whole process around how the data should be handled at the government level or the organization level for the matter of the fact. So four things here, right? People, as I keep talking about the resource, how they are trained, are they aware of how to handle data, how to interpret data, how to collect data, and how to process data, one thing. And then capability of the IT system is one of the other factor. And then how it is been processed and and basically seen interpreted based upon the 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 mode it has been shared. So basically the concern around the security piece of data also came as a highlight over there. So I took away five key points over there. Basically, what I figured is that there is a clear cut gap, that there is no blueprint or, or a roadmap around how to handle data and information. The lack of the strategy, the lack of ownership. I mean, can see it as accountability metrics that I keep sharing. Process and policies in terms of data governance, data lifecycle management, and then technological challenges. Since the volume is huge, maybe the systems are probably not capable. And then lastly, people challenges. And to me, it is basically the first one. But yeah, data stewardship overall, right? I mean, there is a lack of you know data stewardship in place. And people are probably not trained to a level that they can handle data as it need to be. Well, data tsunami. This is a common word we keep hearing about it. So let's talk about that in a little bit more detail, right? What when we hear data tsunami, what is that we are trying to think, right? It's in terms of volume. I mean, there is a huge volume that we talk about. We talk about terabyte and exabytes of data, being generated and then being stored, right? And then the speed. So volume, velocity, variety, veracity, and then lastly value. I will come to that value point. That what is the meaning of the value there, and how do I want to see it differently today. And then also the topic of today is basically looking at the value of data from the business perspective. So volume, velocity, variety, and veracity is something that we are kind of encountering. I mean, it has always been there, and it is not new, right? I mean, so these four things will always be there, and despite having those high volume, high velocity, high variety, and high veracity, we still have to be able to look at the value proposition, right? I mean, that's the crux of the matter is, right? I mean, you cannot see this four, five characteristic differently, or maybe in a isolation. You have to see that these three or four things will always be there, and then you still have to figure out the value in data. So despite having too much of a volume, despite it is really needed too fast, and there are so much of variety around it, like we are talking about structured data, unstructured data, video, audio, a whole lot of different various format. And then due to these three things, there is always a confusion around it, right? Whether it is really accurate, whether can you use it, or whether it is representing the truth that it should be representing. And then all these four we need to manage to really get to the value that business is looking for, right? So hold your thought here, and then let's move on to the next one. So the question here and the perspective here is that, is this characteristics really curse? So it is characteristic or a curse? We have to think, and then we have to really probably think that how we are looking at it. So I talked about volume, there is too much. I talked about velocity, they are just coming too fast. And then I talked about variety, too many formats and too many different ways of having data. And then veracity, since there are so many things involved, it is basically too confusing that okay, which one I should pick, and then how to use it, whether it is credible, truthful, and whether it is accurate or not. And then finally, as I spoke in the that we have to still figure out that and reach the outcome level or the value. So I mean, I have to start, what I thought is that, I mean, maybe we are just getting stuck at the volume. Maybe we are thinking too much about velocity. Maybe we are trying to really deal and then get more into the different formats available, different ways of handling data, and then uh, obviously losing the track around how we should change our perspective and start from, maybe change the way that we have been looking, and then come back and then start handling and tackling the problem from the value standpoint. So if I have to solve a business problem, say for example, uh, say that the objective of the business is to really provide a world class consumer experience, right? I mean, so we can simply jump off and then start looking at, how do we start providing that value. But if you just change the perspective and then think that okay, and go back and ask that okay, why is that needed and what does that mean, that's where the, the things or the approach would drastically change. And then despite having this consistent or the constant available, because as I keep repeating, right, volume will be there, velocity will be there, variety will be there, and then velocity will be there, it will be there, but still we have to figure out the value out of the data and then derive and come to that outcome level, right? So how do we spot that business value? I just created a quick, uh, a vertical here. I mean, you can probably add more to it, but the approach is really that you can look at your area. You can see that what are the different things happening inside your organization, and so primarily this will always fall in this four bucket, right? Sales, marketing, and services, supply chain and manufacturing, human resource, and finances. So inside that, you as a consultant or maybe a data professional should start looking that okay, what are the different actors involved into that. So if I just pick the vertical of sales and marketing and customer services, then I see that customers, I see user contact, I see partners, resellers, distributors, and then a different warranty and services. And similarly, if I look at the supply chain management, I will definitely find those entity, those actors, those if it is obviously an individual, then but if it is not, then yes, let's talk about the domain. Let's say product, uh, you know, supplier, bill of material, for example, and then human resource. If you really see, you're talking about employees, associates, and then in terms of finance, we can probably look at the chart of account, cost centers, company hierarchy, departments, and so on, right? So the takeaway here is that we have to start looking at one, say vertical, and try to see that what are the different things happening over there in terms of that particular domain, and then which are the different actors or maybe entities at play, and how it is impacting the maybe a day-to-day operation. So I'll again pick up the example of say customer service. Then we are talking about consumer, and then what's happening there. I mean, probably the goal is to really provide the world class consumer experience, right? And so that probably can be one of the bigger value. But from the value perspective, right, this is too big to really think and digest, right? I mean, how can you think and scope it in a level so that you can at least get started with the approach of looking at everything from the value and outcome perspective, and not from a simply going ahead and proposing that okay, I want to provide a world class experience, and for that I have to start a data quality program or maybe a data governance program or maybe uh, you know um, try to consolidate all different silos in play and then make everything one. this might just not fly. I mean, if you really think, right? So the whole idea is that looking at what are those verticals going to provide or going to are looking for in terms of the outcome. So we talked about identifying a vertical, getting little deeper into that vertical and trying to pick up one area, and then seeing that what are the different bigger values, and inside that what is the outcome expected. So in this slide, and I'll share with you. So it's the same replica, but now from the perspective of what in this area can be example of a different value proposition or outcome. So if you really look at the sales and marketing and consumer services, consumer 360 or a 360 view of view of consumer is one of the example. Accurate understanding of your install base is one of the enhanced consumer experience and interaction can be one of the example. Maybe the campaign, the reachability of the campaign, or the effectiveness of the campaign, or promotions can be one of the example. Similarly, if you really look at the supply chain and human resource or finance, you would definitely be able to find based upon your current operation. So let's take example of supply chain, then reduce error in product item coding or maybe classification or overall product master data, and then correct invoicing is one of the things. Shipment issues, reduce shipment issues, shipment delays, inventory. Those can be one of the uh, you know areas or bigger areas that you can think that okay, I want to reduce my inventory. That can be one of the outcome. Okay. Why do you want to do that? Probably increase the make the inventory come down, and then probably increase my you know um, inventory cost, or maybe maybe overall profitability, right? So moving on to the next slide is something that I proposed or I created for how do we get started. So we have come to a place where we are talking about changing our approach to looking at uh, data, because data has always been there. I mean, it is not new, and only looking and finding and probably saying that just because of this data I'm not able to do something probably is not the right way. Maybe we can go back to the what is happening, what is the problem, and then coming back to what data is impacting that problem, and then trying to probably go backwards from there, right? So starting from the value to the outcome to the data is something that might just do a trick. So how do you do that, right? The process is very very simple, right? I mean, I'm not proposing one more way of doing it or one more framework of trying to look at your current problem and current data problem or a current data quality problem or a current data governance problem. The process is always standing. It's like time tested, and it's certainly just going to work. So let's see that. So 5-step process. You've got to start from defining, right? So basically, it is going back to asking the very simple question that is, and obviously a very important question: what problem are you trying to solve, and why, right? And then once you get that answer right, you have to really see that are you able to map your business value and outcome, as I spoke in the last slide, right? And then you have to also make sure that is everybody bought into that idea of hitting or targeting that business value that you're trying to achieve, and then outcome that you thought is important. So this whole thing of really winning early in terms of the stage of really defining and scoping is very important. So looking at the problem, what problem you're trying to solve, and then why, finding out if you're going to solve this problem, which of your business value and outcome will be impacted, positively impacted, and then looking at is everybody bought into this idea. If you have got your sponsors, champions, and then if you've got your project charter as a whole, settled or approved, then you have basically one half the battle, right? So defining is going to be a value-based vision and strategy that you have to think. It's not like a couple of jumbled words and sentences, and then you start talking about vision and strategy. It has to be there has to be a value and outcome attached to it to be able to really call it as a vision and strategy, right? So the next one is going to be a step called measure. So I'm basically talking about define, measure, analyze, and improve, and obviously control. So control, I have changed it a little bit to fit into this model, right? So control is going to be really working at each level, right? Because even if you're defining, you got to really do certain governance level stuff. You have to probably make sure that it is not falling apart. You have to put certain intelligence out there to make that step successful. So control in general is basically controlling that one step that you are taking in the overall journey of getting to the business value based outcome, uh, business value and outcome mapping exercise, right? So when you're trying to define, you got to really think that it is properly thought. You are taking care of the different other things that play inside your environment or in your environment, in terms of sponsors, champions. So you got to control those different variables that might impact your you know thought process, or maybe the value that you want to achieve and the outcome you want to achieve versus what others are thinking. So basically creating a shared need can be one of the thing that you are going to implement over there by putting your control plan. Okay, what do you do if this happens? So there is a control plan in place. So what I mean to say is that control is not like a step that you would always keep at the last, like generally we do in Six Sigma: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. What I'm proposing here is that you put the control and governance in center, and then impact each and every step, or use it as and when required in each and every step. So that's how this control piece and governance piece is in center. And so moving on to the next step is measure. So the biggest question and then basic question that we have to ask before we are trying to look at different values and outcome in terms of business, right? Can you measure it? Can we measure it in this process? So it is basically looking at your current process, looking at your as is. What are the different policies already in play? What are the different metrics that you probably have had and then working, and then eventually it's not working, and hence we are trying to revisit the process. What are the different standards, data processes is already in place, and then maybe it is not working, but can we measure it? Can is the current process in place, or as is process measurable? If not, then we have to you know probably go back again to the refine phase. So it's basically pretty much not a kind of a waterfall. It's basically going to, you can always go back to the previous process and then say that, okay, maybe um, maybe I've not defined it well. Maybe it is something that is still too much of a wordy, or kind of a sentence or jumble of a sentence. You got to have something that is truly measurable, and then only you can probably move to the next step. And if not, then you have to develop such kind of a system. So there is a way to also develop that. How do you measure the value of the measure the value, or business value, and then outcomes? We can always discuss about that, but yes. So it's like having a measurement system to measure it, or if not, then develop a measurement system so that you can measure it. If not, then you have to go back and define again, and then come back to the measure state. The next step is going to be a analyze stage, where you basically use your define, the learning from the define, and then your activities that you have done in the measure phase combinedly, and then try to look at the process, or the as is process, little closely, more than, I mean, coming out of the flow and diagram and PPT, and then looking at the whole thing more quantitatively, and then revisiting the whole process, and then thinking that, okay, what are the different gaps, what were the challenges, why the as is process is not working, and what are the different adjustments you can do, or can propose, or can recommend, keeping in mind the value and then outcome that is suggested or established at the level of defined phase, where we scoped that area that we want to work, and then we scope the process that we want to look at from the and then we define the value, and then we define the outcome. So keeping that in your perspective, you will be analyzing the current process as is process, um, more on the quantitative side, because you have established that you can measure it. So definitely, if you can measure, you can improve on. That's the normal common saying that goes, right. So once you are done with that, you would be in a position to really go ahead and showcase, or can at least show that uh, what is going to be the end state look like. It would not be um, a full-fledged solution, or it is not going to be a final solution, but you would definitely have something to showcase that that this is how the future would look like if you really see the current as is, and then using your analysis, and then map gap analysis, or all the good things that we do recommended to improve the process. This is how the future looks like, and it is a very good idea to do this activity, because if you really keep yourself confined to the IT mindset, and not taking an effort, or not making an effort to go back and forth with the consumer or the customer for whom you're developing the solution, you might just uh, be very, very surprised at the end when you really go ahead and say that, hey, there is a solution. But they might have probably some thoughts or some changes and all. So it is very good idea to make it very, very repetitive, or maybe iterative is the right word, to develop something very quickly, keeping in mind the uh, values and outcome that we define, and then based upon our measurement or metric that we established, and then analysis to show up and say that, hey, this is what you've got, and this is a future that is going to look like, and it is much better than what we have been doing. So that way you can iterate the whole thing to a level where it is acceptable, again, based upon your measurement system, based upon your agreement, sponsorship and champions, that you all agreed in the defined field that, okay, this is how the future look like, this is my value, this is my outcome. And then you finally go ahead and then make this as maybe a permanent change, or maybe a new system or new process, and that becomes your improved future state, where you go ahead and then change the policies if needed, change the metric, change the standard, or change the process. So you have to make sure that you are at that stage, also you are able to measure it again. What would happen if you really do that, over there, is to be able to compare and statistically showcase that, okay, my process was at this stage, this capability, when we measured and as is process, and then now it is to be it is basically improved, it is refined, it is able to give the value and the outcome that we established, and then showcase, socialize, and definitely repeat. Why I'm saying repeat? Because I said, right, it is basically an iterative process, and it is it is continuous journey where you kind of look at, again, go back to your scope, look at your business processes. Maybe this time you can go ahead and pick something from finance, maybe you can go ahead and pick up something from supply chain, and then try to look at it, and then again follow the same process. So this is not the new framework, this is not the new strategy, this is basically the improved strategy, where I have done some adjustment based upon you know my thought process, and believe me, this is something that is time tested, and it is going to definitely help you in starting or taking a first step towards shifting your mindset from purely on data, and always thinking that, okay, maybe because of this data there is that problem, right? It is probably the problem is already there. You got to come back from the problem to the data, or find out which data is causing that problem. So maybe the approach here is different, so that you are out of that characteristics versus chaos mindset. Basically, the data has always that character. It had We always had the volume, we always had the variety, we always had the veracity, we always had that urgency to really get the data, or it is coming so fast to us, right? So velocity. But despite having all those challenges, despite having those intrinsic characteristics, which is something that we cannot avoid, we have to still reach to the value. We have to still be able to provide that value. So the approach need to change here. We can't, blame volume to be a problem. We can't blame the velocity to be a problem. We can't blame velocity to be a problem. And we can't, blame uh, the variety to be a problem. Those are the intrinsic characteristic, and they are in a way chaos, but it depends from where you are looking at it. So if you are looking solely on the data, you might just be lost into a data tsunami. You might just be lost into a, I mean, there are different, names to it, but yeah, you will be basically lost into the whole, characteristics which is for good over there. So go back, look from the volume, look from the value, look from the outcome, and then come down so that you find that volume manageable, you find the variety manageable, you find the velocity manageable, and you find veracity manageable. Because if you do not come from the top, you might just be lost at the level where data is at play, right? So my suggestion is to really change your from the place that you're looking, and then look from the top up here in this case, so that you are able to be in sync with those basic characteristics of data, and they are definitely not a chaos, right? So what next? So I have some interesting proposal. So let's do something here. Let's try to be part of this new thinking. Let's try to be part of looking at it differently. So I have shared a news cut at the beginning of this conversation. In fact, that started this whole thought process, value and then outcome thinking, right? So let's consider this news as a as a case study, or maybe a situation, right? And then imagine that government of India, a representative from government of India has called you, or if you are not finding it interesting, then maybe you can put one of your organization that you admire, and you want to consult to, or you want to work for, in mind, and then think that they called you, and they started talking about their data challenges, and they asked you literally to help them. So what would you do? I mean, what would be your reaction? What would be your approach, right? And then you have also been asked to prepare quick proposal, quick presentation about your approach, your thought process to handle this situation to the maybe a CDO of the company, or if you're still sticking to my original case study that I have proposed, maybe a CDO of the country, in this case India, then what would you do? What is that something that you're going to think quickly from the data perspective, and address their challenges. So I hope that today's learning might help you propose it differently, but let's see it. So share with me your thoughts. What do you propose? And and what I can offer is that, what I can think is that maybe you are going to be one of the guests in the next Data Ki Baat, and you present it to the entire world, at least to the LinkedIn community, and then see what is their take on that, and then let's make it interesting. And I'm going to really think that it is going to be very, very interesting. So let's attempt this. I'll share this slide, and then I expect to see some of you, come up and then look at that news article, news piece, and think about this use case, and propose something. And you might just be into a next data kibas show with me, and that day I will not speak. You will be speaking to the audience and telling that, okay, this is the way you propose, and this is the way you would be handling the challenge of the company, or in this case the news article that I shared as a test case. So I'm going to look forward to that proposal, and um, I think this is going to be a interesting one, and who knows, you are the one who is going to be part of the next Data Key show. So thank you very much for watching, and this is Sanjeev. You are watching Data Ki Baat, And I will soon talk to you in the next show. Thank you very much.